Hello, I'm Scott. Welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100 collaboration channel of movie reviewers here on YouTube. I am bringing you a very special video this week. It's a viewer request week. We had a request a couple weeks ago to review the new Jackie Chan movie Skiptrace, which played in exactly one theater in the entire Chicagoland area, and is so far away I would have had to rent a car in order to get there. Luckily it's also on demand, so I saw it that way. Skiptrace is, as usual for Jackie Chan, a comedy with lots of action and fighting and stunt work in it, much of it performed by Jackie Chan himself. But what surprised me when I looked at the credits is that it's actually directed by Renny Harlin. Renny Harlin is a director whose career I have followed over the years, mostly since the 90s. He directed one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, one of the better received sequels to Nightmare on Elm Street, the fourth one, I believe. He then went on to do a big blockbuster, Die Hard 2, among the better Die Hard sequels. And after that, Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone, also a very big hit. And then things started to get bad. He directed one of the most notorious flops of the 90s, a pirate movie called Cutthroat Island, which starred his wife, Geena Davis. Then the following year he made a movie called Long Kiss Goodnight, also with Geena Davis, from a script by Shane Black. It was at that time the most expensive movie that New Line had ever made, and it didn't do nearly as well as it should have, given its budget. After that, Deep Blue Sea. That's the movie where Samuel Jackson's giving a big speech and suddenly a shark jumps up behind him and grabs him in the middle of his sentence. It's got some camp value there. But since that time we haven't heard a lot from him, at least I haven't. Yeah, I was sort of surprised to know, hey, he's still around directing action movies. How about that? As it just so happens, there's another Renny Harlin movie that came out about 10 years ago that's been sitting around where I live for months, and I've been thinking, I'll have to look at that at some point. So I figured, why not talk about it right now? It's called The Covenant, and it's a teen movie involving kids with supernatural powers. I'll get to that, but first let's talk about Skiptrace. Jackie Chan's co-star in this movie is Johnny Knoxville. Johnny Knoxville is a ne'er-do-well who is basically on the run from the Russian mafia because he got a favorite daughter pregnant, and they're out to get him. So he goes to Singapore, at which point he witnesses a murder by a businessman and his associates, a businessman who might have connections to organized crime there. Jackie Chan's been after this guy for a long time because 9 years earlier his partner was killed by this guy. He had a bomb strapped to him and he jumped into basically a body of water in order to save everyone, but he got killed, and so Jackie Chan has been trying to get this guy, bring him into custody ever since. His dead partner has a daughter who Jackie Chan is also very protective of, and when he finds out that Johnny Knoxville has some vital information that was passed along to him by this murder victim in the form of a phone that's been locked up but may contain valuable data, he says, okay, we need to get this to the authorities. But they end up, being on the run not only from gangsters from Singapore, but also Russian gangsters who have come all the way to Singapore looking for Johnny Knoxville to drag him back and force him to get married to the Russian mobster's daughter. So they're after, two groups of mob guys are after him, and they basically make this long sort of cross-country trek through China, trying to find a way to get back and get safe, basically, to figure out how to avoid being killed by these guys or being captured by corrupt authorities, so that they can get the evidence, they can decode the evidence, and get the the Singapore businessman who supposedly is tied to organized crime arrested and put in prison. That's Jackie Chan's priority because he wants to avenge the death of his father. Meanwhile, Johnny Knoxville, he's only in it for himself. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. He just wants to get away, wants everyone to leave him alone so he can have a good time and not worry about people trying to kill him all the time. So yeah, it's sort of a road trip movie. And the two of them, they're just basically, someone actually, when I read that they both had stunt work in their backgrounds, I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, that's right. Johnny Knoxville was one of the guys from Jackass, where they deliberately hurt each other for a television show, whereas Jackie Chan just does stunts for films. I'm like, okay, I get the connection there. So Jackie Chan's been, getting up there in years, but he still manages to pull off quite a few feats that most fit people couldn't do. He's still pretty agile, and he has some really good fight scenes in this and some good stunt work. My favorite scene is where one of the Russian assassins basically is chasing him through like a toy factory or something like that, and he actually picks up a Russian nesting doll to block the punches, and every punch shatters the nesting doll, which reveals a smaller one underneath it. So he keeps blocking these punches with smaller and smaller nesting dolls until he's got like a tiny one left. That was sort of a highlight. It's an okay movie. It's good for a few laughs. It's got some good stunts. Nothing spectacular, but it's fine. It's okay. The Covenant, on the other hand, is not that great of a movie. The Covenant takes place in Ipswich, Massachusetts, excuse me, and the main characters are four teenagers who go to a private school there, and they are all direct descendants of witches, basically, going back way into like the 1600s or 1700s or what have you. And each of them has magic powers, which they can use, but they're actually waiting around for their 18th birthday, the moment of their 18th birthday, in which they have this, what they call an ascension, which their power is just like amplified at the minute of their 18th birthday, which is weird. You think it would be like the 18th year from their conception rather than their actual birthday. Anyway, they are they are basically just hanging out, having a good time, and trying not to use their powers too much because they have apparently a limited battery life or something like that, or it takes a toll on their bodies. Apparently, before you turn 18, you can use magic as much as you like, and you won't feel the actual effects of it until your ascension, at which point you might suddenly turn into a decrepit old man if you used your power too much. If you hold off on using your powers excessively, then your power will increase with your ascension. I'm not really sure how that works, because, I mean, they can use their powers, pretty well, pretty effectively, even though they haven't turned 18 yet. So some of the actors in this movie I wasn't familiar with. The main character is played by a guy named Stephen Strait, who is in Sky High and Stop Loss. I really haven't seen very much of him. He plays Caleb, and Caleb is basically just a short distance away from his 18th birthday at the start of the school year. And he's looking forward to that, although he has to deal with a sort of obnoxious member of their group of the four friends, who's played by Toby Hemingway. He plays a character named Reed, and he really reminded me of Draco Malfoy, because he's a troublemaker, he's got a bad attitude, he's kind of sullen, and he's got platinum blonde hair, just like Draco. This guy, Toby Hemingway, was in Black Swan and In Time. I don't recognize him from either of those movies, so I'm not really sure, that's what his CV says. Anyway, there's also Sebastian Stan, aka Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Years before he got cast in, Marvel movies, he played another teenager, a new student who's transferred into the school, and doesn't know anything about any of the guys with superpowers. Also, Laura Ramsey plays the resident love interest. Her character's name is Sarah. She's this pretty blonde girl who immediately takes a liking to Caleb, so they're like the power couple, except she also doesn't know that he has superpowers. Also in this movie, you got Taylor Kitsch, who's like Caleb's best friend, and Tyler, played by Chase Crawford, who's really the useless character in the bunch. There's four close friends, but he really doesn't have nearly as much impact on the story as anybody else. Chase Crawford, of course, was from Gossip Girl. Finally, there's also Jessica Lucas, who plays Kate, who's also who is basically Sarah's best friend and her roommate in the private school. And her function in the movie is really just to be a victim. She gets spells cast on her. Everyone worries about her. She's lying comatose or infected with some sort of spider parasite for most of the movie. Yeah, she doesn't do a whole lot except just like be put in danger and have people go, "No, don't hurt her, don't hurt her," that stuff like that. Anyway. So the whole conflict of the story starts out of the conflict between Caleb and Reed. Sorry, I have to keep looking at this piece of paper because I have a hard time remembering these characters' names. They're not very memorable. And Reed really is using his power excessively, and everyone's telling him to stop, especially Caleb. And so they get into sort of magic fights in which they're throwing like these CGI translucent power waves at each other to knock each other off their feet and knock other things off their feet. They can also like levitate, and they can like use mind control and things like that. And they've got a lot of power for people who haven't actually ascended yet. It's weird. I'm not really sure what the ascension does. If it amplifies their power, we don't see a whole lot of that because it's just like, you know, they can already do quite a lot. But there's also a secret bad guy in the movie, someone who's actually using this same kind of power, but for really, really bad things. A couple people get killed. There's people that get spells put on them and hurt very badly, or, you know, it looks like they're infected with something, diseases or what have you. And everyone thinks that it's Reed because he's got such a bad attitude, but it might actually be someone else. Well, there's a couple of characters who, you know, seem sort of tangential to the plot, so maybe one of them is it. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that, of course, in case you're seeing the movie, but I don't recommend it. It's not that great. And the cinematography is all like super dark and moody, and everything about it is just sort of overbearing. It's sort of like an underworld movie. It's very dark and blue and gloomy, and not a very interesting story overall. So that's my review of The Covenant and Skiptrace for my little Renny Harlin double feature right here. Like I said, the movie Skiptrace was a viewer request, and so I invite all of you guys once again to please give us requests for movies to review, or focus on particular actors, actresses, directors, genres, movie series, what have you. We'd really like to hear from you. You can leave a comment below, or if you check the link below to our Facebook page, you can leave a comment there. That would be excellent. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next week. I'm going to be reviewing a couple of new theatrical movies then. Take it easy.